There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's the Conservation Commission's meeting on Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. It is now, I don't have my clock on the.
7:06.
Thank you, 7:06. Thank you. And with us tonight, we have Carol Jordan, Jackie Kulig, Laura Rodriguez, and Nora Jones. Do I hear a motion to seat Nora? I know that Marilyn's not coming tonight, so.
I'll move to seat Nora from Maryland.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? So moved. Okay, let me just write this down here. Okay, great. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from December 18th?
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, second.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Nora. Any discussion? Okay.
Oh, actually, I had one thing.
Okay.
Shoot, where are they? Just, and number 3.
Yep.
Approval of minutes.
Yeah.
It says the minutes from December 18th be accepted with the following correction. I think that should be November.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll correct it to the correct November date. Thank you for picking up on that, Laura.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay. All right. Doesn't look like we have any present to speak tonight. Carol, do you want to give us a treasurer's report?
Yeah. We have slightly different balance from what's in the minutes because we put in an estimated figure of $100 even for the library raffle basket, and the bill actually came to $97.93. So we have a current balance with expenditures to date of $319.45 and a balance of $1180.55.
Okay.
So we're pretty much where we were, except for a minor adjustment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just write that down. Balance. Okay. And then I'll just like to report, as I always like to do for our minutes. Oh, let's see. Bob's coming in. Okay. Hi, Bob. Just make sure you're
Hi.
hi.
Yeah, and Kathy, the November meeting was November 20th.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, I'll correct that. All right, let the record show that Bob Shabbat joined the meeting at 7:09. All right. Very good. And I think under finance, I just also want to report that Carol is going to work on submitting the budget that we had agreed upon at our last meeting for $1,500, the request to the Board of Finance. And I will be submitting our request to the CIP. At our last meeting, we voted to request $40,000 a year for the next 5 years. And there will be a hearing with the CIP Commission on February 12th that I'll attend. If anybody else would like to join me to defend our request. Thanks, Bob. Always appreciate you at those CIP meetings. Okay, so that'll be on the 12th, Bob, of February, if you want to mark your calendar. All right, moving on to old business, support for farmland preservation. Jackie did a wonderful job of putting some documents together for us. I hope everybody's had a chance to take a look at them. Jackie, I can put some of these things up on the screen if you want. Let me share my screen. Let's see, give me a minute here. Okay. Can everybody see the document? Proposed right to farm ordinance?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, great. Jackie, if you want to walk us through some of the forms that you came up with, the documents you came up with, that'd be great.
Sure, yeah, so you have, it looks like the proposed right to farm ordinance. Give me 1 second. That's the first of 2 proposals I put together. The right to farm ordinance is more of a statement of support for farms in town, and to hopefully inform, future decisions made in town to support agriculture in general. The state already has a right to farm law, but many towns opt to make their own right to farm ordinance just to further emphasize the support. So that one's pretty straightforward, I would say. I don't know if we want to do any discussion of that before I talk about the other proposal.
Yeah, let me just throw that out to people then. Do people have any questions about this? Jackie, let me just go back for just a second.
Mhm.
This document that you put together, this is something that you basically wrote that's kind of modeled after others.
Yep. So I did, borrow, some wording from Ashford had done, had updated their tax ordinances recently. So I, kind of borrowed from there and then borrowed from some other resources I found through the state.
Okay.
But yep.
Okay. So this would be something that we could move forward to the Board of Selectmen at some point, asking them to consider making a new ordinance that would basically reaffirm and restate what the statute already says about the right to farm. Is that how I understand it?
Yep.
Okay.
So
Anybody?
so what you're presenting here, Jackie, is the discussion of why we would want an ordinance and what it would contain generally, but it isn't a draft ordinance per se. That would be different from this.
Correct. Yeah, I have not specifically seen a draft ordinance for the right to farm,
Mhm.
but I can look into that further. There were some draft ordinances for the other proposal.
Right. Yeah, the other proposals were Ashford and Mansfield. The other ones on the tax exemption, they were pretty straightforward and really came straight out of the statutes, whereas there might be more difference in the wording of a right to farm ordinance may not be standard in the same way as the tax exemption ones are.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Just clarify.
Okay.
I don't know.
I just have one thing that I think we should consider. Instead of going in cold to a selectmen's meeting, I think it may be beneficial if you had a precursor meeting with the first selectman, so he has a better understanding of what you're going to propose.
Hmm.
And that would, I think, ease things into for the other 2 selectmen. I strongly recommend doing that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's it's always better. The more informed people are and people don't like to be blindsided. And the more knowledge there is on the ground and hopefully some support and understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve in advance would be very helpful, I think.
Mhm.
So I have a question. Normally you would bring this to a meeting, not submit it as a letter?
I think you would send a letter to the Board of Selectmen with the materials
Mhm.
and a cover letter stating what we would like to do. And then you could suggest some verbiage as to what the ordinance might say. And
Okay.
then we would then we would ask to attend a meeting to explain it and to answer questions before they may not even consider it right upon that night, but at least it would give them an opportunity to ask questions based on the documents that we had provided.
Okay.
And if we were going to, I think if we're going to address both the tax exemption issues and the right to farm, with perhaps an eye to a town meeting that would cover both issues, that it would be good to actually have a draft ordinance on the right to farm. The others, we pretty much have draft ordinances available to us, but we might want to spend some time and make sure that we as a commission agree on the text of a right to farm ordinance. Because the others are basically boilerplate language right out of the statute, whereas right to farm is a little bit different. And right to farm can be a little bit more controversial. I don't think the tax exemptions are going to result in that much loss of income to the town that it'll be a problem. But there are a lot of people who don't like things that are associated, like unpleasant odors that can be associated with farming. And in some towns, those have been caused a lot of fuss and bother. So maybe, we should be careful about how we word it and agree on a wording of language for a proposed right to farm, as well as the other two, to accompany any letter to the selectmen. And it was suggested to meet with the first selectman in advance certainly wouldn't hurt.
I would be interested too, as we move forward with this, is to look at the current, as you're saying, this is a right that's granted already by state statute. But I'd be interested in looking at our zoning regulations to see what it does say about farms. If there are any regulations at this point in time regarding, obviously there's going to be water protection, for example, manure piles and such, which could cause an odor, but if they become an issue with leaching into wetlands and so on, that's a different issue. But I'm just wondering under zoning, what we have in place related to farming. Is that something somebody would be interested or available maybe to look further into, talking to people at land use and looking into what's on the books already for zoning ordinances regarding farming?
Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind, Kathy, is a number of years ago when John Blessington brought that proposal of right to keep animals on smaller parcels.
Yep.
And there are specifics insofar as the manure has to be X number of feet away, the barn has to be so many X number of feet away from an adjoining property line. So those things are kind of spelled out when they did that portion of their regulations.
Okay.
And with what Mike is having done now with a lot of the regulations is they're going over it and kind of redefining a lot of that stuff and clarifying what exactly is there in the various ordinances in town. So I think that right now that's kind of a work in progress to massage if there's any discrepancies in from one part of an ordinance into another. We're with planning and zoning, we're sort of in the middle of going through the regulations, what's been suggested and what inconsistencies the group that's doing this for us has found. So we're working on that in small chunks.
I think some of that's happening on inland wetlands also.
Mhm. Okay. I mean, it may be important before we even bring this to the Board of Selectmen, this particular one in terms of right to farm, to bring it forward maybe and work with planning and zoning, like you said, to see, make sure it's consistent with other zoning regulations and ordinances in town, as well as to get ultimately their support. You know, is it part of the plan of conservation and development? You know, to encourage farming. So it'd be nice if we could kind of work together with planning and zoning on this in some way.
Well, and there again, I think it might be one of those things that you could probably bring this proposal and just have Mike from land use take a look at it and get some input from him.
Okay,
Um,
and also your board.
Uh, yeah, I mean, before you approach the board, again, it's one of these things, you know, let's take this and let's bite off small bites instead of trying to tear off a huge chunk. If we have a conversation with Mike, he may give us some insights that we could we could massage our proposal so that it's more palatable when we take it to Planning and Zoning Commission. You understand?
Yep.
And I think there might be that might apply to inland wetlands also, because I know that, I believe they're looking at, Mike is looking at some of the inland wetlands things too.
Yeah.
And possible changes there. So, you know, the more you can cooperate with the other boards, the better. And as you say, before going to the selectmen and with an eye to taking it to a town meeting proposal, certainly the better communication we have with other agencies, the better it will be. And hopefully we, as Kathy indicates, we might win some support, or because more people would be familiar with what it is we're proposing and trying to achieve.
Right. Okay. So in this particular ordinance proposal, what do you think our next steps should be? So do we want to come up with a draft ordinance first, discuss it amongst ourselves, and then pass that on to Mike D'Amato so he can look at it from a zoning perspective as well as in the wetlands perspective in terms of what they're doing? Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense.
Okay.
I think
can
so.
Look into
And-
some of the other towns' ordinances and see if I can put together a draft.
Oh, okay, that would be great, Jackie.
I think it's nothing like cribbing from other people's work, but but this one is a little bit more general than the tax exemption ones, which are very cut and dried when you look at the statutes, and the local ordinances that are basically just take that language and propose it, because it's very the statutes are very restrictive.
Yeah.
And we can look at, and I think the place to start is looking at what's in the state right to farm statute.
Yep.
And as well as other towns, how other towns have adapted that to local ordinances.
So Jackie, as you did with the other ordinances for tax exemptions, you did basically cut and paste the statute for those proposals. Can we do the same, you know, when you come up with the I think we should have two things here. One is I think we should have a draft ordinance and maybe some of the language that prefaces that could explain, as you did in this document here, the first paragraph, you know, what we're trying to, that probably should be more of a cover. Yeah, because the ordinance itself probably wouldn't say that, but it could say something like the town of Willington is committed to fostering sustainable land use. That could be in the beginning of an ordinance. Yeah, so we can kind of like reword that to be, you know, how the town would.
Do you think that the
Yeah.
draft ordinance should be contained within the proposal document or have a separate document?
I think it should be separate. I think the proposal should outline what we're trying to achieve and the background as to it's already a state right. And then have, and say that this is the Conservation Commission's suggestion of a potential ordinance that reaffirms that. And then you have the actual draft of the ordinance on a separate document.
I would consider the proposal that you have, Jackie, as an introduction.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would work well. And a cover letter basically indicating what it is we're trying to achieve and why we're submitting this, and refer them to the attached draft ordinance for consideration. And I think that's the best way to go. And that should probably go to three agencies: planning, zoning, inland wetlands, as well as the selectmen. And as Bob suggests, running all this stuff by Mike D'Amato would be probably a first step before even approaching the other agencies.
So, so if I were to come up with a draft ordinance, would we want to discuss that at the next meeting? And then we would contact Mike after the next meeting?
Yes, and along with a cover letter, we need to come up with two that would basically explain what we're trying to do. And then as Carol and Bob both mentioned as well, the ordinance would kind of stand alone as a draft.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, how would the cover letter, you think, differ from the proposal?
Well, the proposal is basically part of the cover letter.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I
then,
think the proposal is indicating what our intent, our goals are in trying to get this an ordinance passed, and with persuasive language rather than the technicalities that might be in the language of the ordinance itself. Does that make sense?
yes, it does. But in the second paragraph, that in this proposed right to farm ordinance, that Jackie had submitted to us, the second one it does indicate that this is already a statute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of the cover letter, very important part of the cover letter.
Right.
But that the town would be choosing to reinforce a right that's in statute, but make it more present to people in our community, that this is important for our community, and not just bringing it in line with state statutes, but why it is we feel it's important for the town of Willington to give this priority.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jackie, if you were to basically take what you've already done on this particular ordinance and I would say also put the ordinance in there from the state, not the ordinance, the statute. Cut and paste that as well. So that's in the letter that we're going to send. I will basically, whatever you're going to reformat this into, I can take it and put it into the form of a letter from the commission.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And I think the other ordinances, the tax exemption ones, essentially the Ashford and Mansfield ordinance are virtually identical, and they come straight out of the state statutes. And in those cases, I think they're just basically saying Willington instead of Ashford or Willington instead of Mansfield. The languages are very clear on those two. So having the statute, those kind of write themselves in the sense that what a language has been chosen by other municipalities just is clearly taken directly from the statutory requirements. So that one's not so bad. This is so difficult. The right to farm is a little bit more, I think, potentially have political and it might uh, bring forward a lot more discussion than the tax exemption. I think the main concern with the tax exemption would be how much revenue would we lose if we were to do this? And I don't think it's a terribly significant amount, but that's some research we should do before we ever went forward to a town meeting, and maybe before we even approach the selectmen, to be able to answer that kind of question.
Right.
Well, and one of the things that's brought up in the tax part of this presentation is that it states that in order to have the ability to defer the taxes, they have to generate an income.
Yep.
And that's the thing that's all, that keeps it from going, big time insofar as numbers, because there's not really that many people that can substantiate that type of revenue from their farm operations.
But it does say, or $15,000 in farm expenses. So I may not, let's say I have a sugar bush. I
Yeah.
may not be bringing in $15,000 worth of maple syrup sales, but
Yeah.
I could potentially, put up a building to do my sugaring that would cost me in excess of $15,000. So potentially,
Buy
it's,
an evaporator, that'll do it for you.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
So it could be on either side, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's likely that I'm not sure exactly, but I think the business would need to be registered with the town to show that proof of income or loss.
Okay.
But we might be able to find or get a list of farm businesses in town, because we get like a personal property declaration that we need to fill out every year, and with that comes the equipment exemption form, the standard state mandated equipment
Yep.
exemption.
Yeah.
So I think that's only offered to folks who are already registered as businesses.
Okay. That would be something that could be clarified with the tax assessor, right?
Yeah, I think, I was thinking I could go in and maybe ask those questions. I don't know how much information they can give me about, who's registered as a business and all that, but maybe they can give me a general idea of how many people are already filing the equipment exemption,
Yeah.
For the lower amount. And then those people presumably would be at least eligible for the farm building exemption if they have buildings that they want to.
Yeah, the people that are registered, it's not broken down. It's just a list of businesses that are registered with the town.
But we do have people who have land in 490, and that's another way to kind of capture. I think this would be a good project to try to team up with the tax assessor, Kara Fishman, once we get through the town's reeval, because they're
Yeah.
really busy with that right now. But this could be something to discuss, further with her. So we would, like Carol said, first of all, because there's going to be a lot of questions, how will this impact the grand list?
Oh, yeah.
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 So, I think, working together ahead of time with Kara, explaining to her what we're looking to do, she could give us some information that might save us some work down the road. Do you know what I mean? It would
Yeah.
better intersect with other things that she's already aware of or know, or maybe maybe there's other towns, because Kara works for several towns as the tax assessor, and there may be other towns who have already done this as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she
Yeah.
does work for towns that have already done this, because I had talked with her about this previous.
Oh.
So she works for towns that offer the building exemption.
Oh, good. Okay.
And she's the one who sends out the forms. So she sends out the building exemption form along with the personal property declaration. So
Yeah.
she'll be sending out that other building form. So she would know basically who's eligible to even receive those.
And it's in any of these kinds of things, it's always important to try and anticipate what kind of questions are going to be asked and make sure we have the necessary information to stand up in a town meeting and talk with some authority about facts and figures and whatever.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. Should we move on and just discuss the next document on the tax exemption ordinances then a little bit more specifically, just look through it? I've got it up on the screen right now.
Yeah, so I had sent out an original proposal which called for an increase in the state mandated equipment exemption for farms. Originally, it was increasing it from 100,000 to 200,000. But just after doing some research over the last couple of weeks, I found out that last year the state passed a bill or a public act that increased that potential increase basically to 250,000. So I've updated the document accordingly.
Okay.
So that, yeah, we could potentially have an additional $250,000 assessed value for farm machinery. And this particular exemption, it would be pretty easy to find out how much or what farms would potentially utilize it, if any, at this time, because farms are already filing this form. So any farms that were claiming 100,000 presumably might have more to claim, but farms that were only claiming 30,000 or something
Mhm.
presumably at this time would not be even utilizing the additional exemption. But leave it open for with inflation and everything, folks are buying new equipment and everything is pretty expensive if you buy it new.
Yeah.
And then the other proposed exemption is for farm buildings. And like Bob said, it need at least $15,000 in farm sales or farm expenses. And the building has to be used exclusively for farming. And I included a state definition of farming, or it can be used for housing farm employees. And that was originally $100,000 per building, and last year they updated it to $500,000 per
Okay.
building.
Up to, right.
Yeah.
So last year, Jackie, before last year, was it only 100,000?
Correct.
Okay, for the increase? Because I noticed
Well,
that,
yeah, it's not really an increase for that one because there's
Oh,
either no exemption or
correct,
the exemption.
okay. Because I noticed the examples that you gave us from Mansfield.
Yeah.
They only have 100,000 additional for the
Yeah,
machinery.
that
and
was
then-
a draft from Connecticut Farm Bureau, and I
Oh,
don't think
okay.
had updated it. I know that Ashford did update their ordinance to reflect those new numbers just, in the last half a year or so.
Okay.
And I know Woodstock is discussing that possibility. I think I had mentioned in my previous email that I was updating the list of towns that have these revisions already in place, or at least the previous revisions of, maybe they didn't update it since last year, but they had exemptions in place.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I do have a pretty good list at this point, as you can see in the document. Ashford, Bolton, Brooklyn, Chaplin, Columbia, Eastford, Ellington, Hampton, Hebron, Killingly, Mansfield, Somers, Stafford, Thompson, and Woodstock, all in this area. And I do have a list of, which exemptions they have, or if they have both. which I
Okay.
can share.
great.
Yeah, that's terrific, because I think that kind of documentation will be helpful when we move forward to go, to the Board of Selectmen. I mean, I don't think that this particular ordinance would need to move through the planning and zoning or inland wetlands, because it's not really a zoning issue.
No.
No.
This would probably just go to the Board of Selectmen and then to town meeting. Or Board of Finance as well, I would imagine too, because it's gonna affect the grand list. Yeah. This is great, Jackie. You did an excellent job.
Thanks for all their hard work on this.
Well,
Yeah.
this one definitely, I borrowed a lot from Ashford, so.
Yeah, well, it's very readable. Again, I think what we're gonna have to do is come up with, and maybe I'm wrong, is it our job as the Conservation Commission to actually write a draft ordinance? For example, like the ones that you've shown us as the model ordinance. Do we need to do that, or do we need to just put forth that we're recommending that the town adopt an ordinance of a certain amount, for example, and then let the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance come up with the language in the ordinance? How do you feel about that?
I
Well, I
think,
think we've got a better handle on it.
yeah,
Than they would,
Yeah, I
you know,
think it would be easy to
and it's,
modify the ones that are
Yeah.
available through the Farm Bureau.
Okay,
just with our name and the updated dollar values.
yeah,
Uh,
go ahead.
I would think that we should have an ordinance in our pocket,
Mhm.
and we can propose all we want. And then when they say, well, what? And be able to offer that to them. I'm sure everybody would be pleased about that. And that way there's only all they have to do is kind of consider massaging different sections of it, as opposed to trying to develop the whole thing.
I think we
Yeah.
should provide a draft,
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
a proposal.
Of
Yeah.
course, I think any ordinance that the Board of Selectmen would consider, they probably would have it go through legal
Oh,
before.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're
So-
giving them
Yeah.
such a good template to start.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more work you can do, the less the legal fees are. That was,
And the
that was the
closer you'll
advice I
get
was
to
given
what you
by,
want.
when we were doing purchase and sales agreement is, the more we do, the less hours will be billed by the attorney, and it worked out that way.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's to our benefit.
So, Jackie, are you willing to keep massaging this a little bit?
Yeah, I can get both of these hopefully with draft ordinances and yeah. I don't know if you think a separate cover letter is needed for this one, or if it has enough information, or
I think, this one is basically, we could just put as a letter, I think. The only thing that I would suggest we change is, under the proposal number 1, equipment tax exemption revision.
yeah.
At the third bullet in that paragraph, the Willington Conservation Commission is recommending that CGS section 12-91B be adopted by the town of Willington. We have to specify what that additional exemption is that we're recommending, because I think that I'm wondering if you can do anything between $0 and $250,000 as the additional exemption. Do you know what I'm saying? Or
Yeah,
is it
yeah.
is it a flat additional exemption of 250,000?
I had kind of interpreted previously that that one was just, well, previously it was just 100,000, but I think most towns just added the 100,000, but yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that language.
Yeah, I'm looking at, let's see, you did have,
Additional exemption from property tax, to the extent of an additional assessed value of 250,000.
Yeah,
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 if it
so
just said two.
Specify 250,000.
no. So it says to the extent of,
Mhm.
so you could go up to an additional 250,000, it sounds like, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay,
But you can, but other towns are proposing less, like they could increase it from 100 to 200 rather than 100 to 350.
and that would be, the same is true of the one for the buildings. So you shall, according to the state statute, you shall establish the amount of such exemption from the assessed value, provided such amount may not exceed $500,000. So in terms of what the Conservation Commission would be recommending, I think what you had written here under proposal number 2, farm building exemption, bullet number 2 or bullet 2.
Yeah.
We're recommending that the town of Willington provide a tax exemption on farm buildings that meet the criteria under CGS section 12-91 for up to 500,000. So of the assessed value. So do we need to state a value, or we're going to let the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance determine what they would do for farm buildings?
I was kind of suggesting the 500, up to that value, like some buildings might not be that valuable. So I was suggesting that the town go with the higher value, and, if they want to talk
Yeah, the
about.
maximum, I assume that the maximum exemption would be the assessed value of the building, which would, in many cases, would not come to 500,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so you're saying up to, so let's say a building was assessed at $700,000, only $500,000 of that assessed value would be exempt.
Right.
Okay,
But, but there might be, a lower valuation could be exempted.
right. So the town could say only up to 300,000 if they wanted to by state statute. They could determine what the town itself could determine what that exemption could be. It couldn't be any more than 500,000 by statute, but it could be any number below that. Is that correct?
I think that's something to ask a lawyer.
Okay.
And that's one reason to have, get a legal review of the proposed ordinance. But you can always ask.
Mhm.
Mike might know the answer to that.
Okay. Because that's a big jump. I mean, it was 100,000. And then the statute changed to up to 500,000.
Yeah.
So if you had a large commercial egg farm here in town, you might be losing a lot of revenue to the town if you're exempting, the building up, by $500,000. I doubt that any small farmer in town would have something of that value, but that was my only concern about these ordinances, was that if we do have large commercial production, agricultural production come into town at some point, and people are hoping that that's going to, be a source of revenue, this could really put a dent in that.
I agree.
Mhm.
I
And
think
yeah.
that we should hopefully be supporting all the farms in town despite the size, and that it shouldn't really make much of a difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, people weigh in on this, but I guess my idea of the rural farm that is going to we're not only trying to protect open space, we're trying to protect rural character, a sense of community. If a very large commercial, like again, pig farm, egg farm came in, they may have a huge building that's going to cover a lot of open space, so to speak. They're going to be an eyesore. They could potentially, bring in a lot of again, I'm just saying, these could be issues that people will have with this kind of an ordinance. I'm playing a devil's advocate too, because I think this is another thing people might say, hey, you know, if we have these ordinances, it might attract larger commercial businesses because they can have $500,000 of their building not be taxed. So again, you know, how has this affected other towns? We don't know because the statute that has increased these values has gone, you know, has only been in place for a year.
Mhm.
So,
Kara Fishman might have some insights into that. From,
yeah.
if she has experience in other towns, I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, there are a lot of things to take into consideration when, in making this kind of proposal. So, yeah, there's a big difference between saying 100,000 and saying 500,000. And if we had the flexibility to cap it,
Are we trying to support smaller local businesses? You know, that's the other thing, like,
Farmland conservation in general is what we're trying to support, and
Mhm.
a large farm is going to do that, and that's going to keep that land from going to a solar farm or warehouse or some other sort of business that is going to you know, potentially destroy the land beneath it, versus farming, which is much more likely to conserve the land for future generations. Even if there is a large building on it, you know, you have to generate the crops or the livestock from the land.
Mhm.
And
Anybody
supporting
else?
local food economy, you know, even large farms are doing that. You know, they
Yep.
might not be selling at a farm stand on the side of the road, but they are going to feed a lot of people. So.
Right. But they also, in some ways, can drive out small businesses too. That's what worries me sometimes about large commercial operations.
One of the things that we're going to find out with this is we're going to have our thoughts and our ideas of why we're presenting it. When it goes to town meeting, that's when the townspeople are going to have their say.
Mhm.
And that's where we're going to hear their concerns. When we hear their concerns, what we're presenting may have to be updated to accommodate what the people in the community want and don't want.
Mhm.
As we might have the best intentions, you know, and it's going to, until we have a public hearing, you're not going to know where the chickens are going to roost.
let's be.
Quite appropriate.
Oh, that's a good point. I'd also like to, you know, are commercial buildings assessed differently than, let's say, for example, a barn that you have on your property, Jackie, that you're using for, you know, storing vegetables? I don't know. That's another question maybe for Kara. At what point does a building become a commercial building versus a building on someone's farm that is, you know, a small business rather than a big commercial interest?
The assessed value usually just has to do with, you know, how up to date and how recently it was built, and how large, you know, the
Square footprint. Yeah.
you know, what, I don't know.
Yeah. True. You know, and then the machinery inside is as a whole, the equipment is a whole nother thing that they tax. So if it's a commercial sized business, they probably have a lot more equipment and things too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts from other members?
Well, interesting comments you just made, Kathy, is we're talking about farm buildings. We're not I don't see anywhere where it says that this covers the equipment that's in the farm building. So if you had an egg operation, say, and you had all the cages
Mhm.
for maintaining the hens and collecting the eggs and washing and packing and such, it doesn't seem like that is exempt. It's just the building.
No. There's the one right above it, the equipment tax exemption.
Yeah, but that's only for
Oh, okay.
That says
Farm
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 machinery,
That's farm machinery,
I
what
mean,
I take.
horses and ponies,
Yeah.
and not for, I don't think. I don't know
So
what
the
qualifies
equipment-
as farm machinery.
I would think.
Well, and that's a good question.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
those are questions to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. See, we're getting smarter already.
We're raising the kinds of questions that might very well pop up in a public
Oh,
hearing.
Oh, yeah, right,
Motor
absolutely.
vehicles.
Yep.
Mm.
It's good to beat ourselves up so we're ready for, because it brings up all these questions that will probably be asked.
Looks like farm machinery is defined in section 14-1. I don't have that up, but in the statute, it says
Okay.
all farm machinery except motor vehicles.
Find in section 14.1, right? Yeah.
We need to talk to a tax attorney to get that answer.
All right, is there any more work we want to do on this one tonight, or we'll wait until
I
Jackie brings the next draft back?
Yeah, next draft. Thank you, Jackie.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, thanks again. All right, let me pop back here to us. Okay. And go on to the next item. Property management. Fenton Ruby Park. Nothing really to report from the stewards. We're going to talk a little bit more about the park plan. So I had sent out information to you regarding the most current park plan for Fenton Ruby Park. And also Conwood, Jackie had sent you out a link to, or actually the actual PDF file for the Conwood Forest Management Plan. She had done that directly after our meeting last time. And then I sent you out a few forms that were basically the summary page from the Conwood document that looked at the different stands and the recommendations, as well as the stand map, and then a form from Austin Harmon from Hull Forestry. So let me share some of that. Okay, let's see. Conwood, okay. So let's see, let me go to the park management plan first. Okay, can you all see that? The park management plan?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully it's 11 pages long. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it a little bit, refresh our memories. It's actually something we're supposed to review and either edit or approve every 5 years. So we're kind of due right now. We won't do that tonight, but we can start doing that this year. And I'm just going to pull this down through the pages a little bit.
Yeah, and
So-
this is our own park management plan, as opposed to the forestry plan. Just so for clarity, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah. So this was developed in 96, I believe. And Carol can tell you more of the history of it because she was on the commission back then. But
I think I also was the chair of the committee that did this.
I can
Something
tell
like
just
that.
by the way it's written, it's perfect. So
I think, I don't know, it's a long time ago, guys.
good job.
And kept me busy after I quit as town treasurer.
It's well written for sure. Very
But it was a good committee.
So what I did is, I just wanted to kind of have us review what are the general purpose and objectives for Fenton Ruby Park. And so in terms of looking at whether or not we want to go down the path of having some timber harvesting done to improve the forest, just make sure it aligns with the park management plan, with Conwood's plan, and then we can kind of move on from there. So the general purpose and objectives of the management plan are to preserve the natural history, the natural and historic integrity of the property, to maintain and enhance habitat for native and migratory wildlife, to provide open space for the benefit of the town, to enhance passive recreational opportunities, to enhance active recreational opportunities, and to provide a setting for environmental education. And just to go back to this one on the active recreational opportunities, if you read further through the document, that only applies to the land that is to the west of Fenton Ruby Park. So it basically would be the hayfield side, which we're not really using for active recreation, but the way that the park management plan is written, potentially you could do active recreation on that side, on the west side of the river.
I had a question on that. It
Yeah.
goes into to give examples of passive recreation, but it doesn't give any examples of active. And I was kind of like, well, what do they mean by active recreation?
Yeah.
Besides things that were prohibited. It did say some things that were prohibited, like hunting and
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, that was more along the lines of not of things that would require facilities such as ball fields, things of that kind that are, which we
You have
now
to
have other
restructure, so-
areas in town. We now have other parts of town that have that kind of active sport oriented kinds of things as opposed to, just sort of.
So
Yeah.
potentially, I mean, the way it's written, let's say the rec department decided they wanted to propose to put a lacrosse field in the hayfields. They potentially, using the park management plan, could say that's a potential use for it. And they, there would be a lot of steps you'd have to go through before, it would probably go to town meeting. But we're using it for hayfield right now, for agricultural purpose, which is not specified in here anywhere. It doesn't say that we have to use it for that, but that's the way it's being utilized. So
Maybe
And we're
we
keep
should,
that-
maybe we should change that.
Yeah, think about, and actually we might look into the terminology, how other people use that language, active as opposed to passive.
Yeah, because that did confuse me. I was like, so
Yeah.
why are hiking and snowshoeing not considered active?
Yeah,
uh,
I think that's a really good question and probably something that would be good to talk with people in other towns and generally how those terms are used.
It sounds
this
to
is-
me like it's more the active are things that are going to modify the land. You're going from growing hay to suddenly putting in a ball field.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
having to keep it
that was sort
level,
of-
you'd have to level it out if it was going to be a ball field. You'd have to go in there and do
And
quite a bit.
actually, there probably are definitions, for other organizations like like state parks and how they define certain purposes and functions. And I don't really, it was a long time ago when we wrote this.
Okay, I
So-
had a question.
those are good questions.
Very good
But
questions.
But I thought by just reviewing the purpose and objectives of the park management plan before we go on to Conwood would be helpful. Was there anything else that people read in here that they need clarification about, or they have a question about?
Actually, the one thing is part of it is part of the language has to do with what was in the deed of transfer.
Okay,
where premises, whoops. No, let me go
Was
back.
it before then? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, the present.
I've got a copy of I've got a copy of the park management plan in my notebook somewhere.
I did have another one that I didn't understand.
Okay.
Well, just maybe, I mean, I've gone hiking up there, but it said the foundation footprint of the existing residential structure may be used by the grantee for the purpose of siting a future facility that serves conservation or recreation. And I didn't know what the existing residential structure was they were talking about.
There was the house where I believe Mr. Ruby was born. It was, where the picnic table is now, as you go opposite the parking lot.
Okay,
And one of the things that was specified in the deed that was the footprint of that should be maintained. So if you look carefully in the grass, you will find stones at 4 corners where the foundation of that building was.
okay,
That building was torn down because it was not in good enough condition to maintain, and it was taken by somebody who retrieved any materials he could, was torn down, and he was allowed to use any of the materials that he could for other purposes. And there was across the road where the parking lot was, is a shed, which some of us had the pleasure of tearing down, cleaning out and tearing down. You also, if you know where the hill is, and there's this place where there's this slope and the wall at the top, that was because we got tired of taking trash out of that sloping area. So we just had Sonny Hipsey come in and don't put a bunch of dirt on top of it. But it makes an interesting archaeological dig, as one of our Girl Scouts found out.
time capsule.
Yeah, but yeah, we found all kinds of things like the remains of people's lunches and
Oh, as long as not the remains
really
of
ugly,
people.
polyester strips, the kind you would use for making a rug, but they were not in terribly ugly colors and conditions. But it was an interesting process cleaning that up. But there are 4 cornerstones stones at the corners of the building. And that's, I think, that the area it's referenced. We could put a structure there. We could put a pavilion of some sort.
A nature center type
A
thing.
nature center kind of thing, something like that. But that's what that reference is.
Okay, thank you.
And so I just want to get down to the one where it talks about forestry. So under forestry, the objective, maintain the woodlands in a healthy and aesthetically attractive condition conducive to the spiritual, recreational, and educational needs of the public. And the goals under that would be to conduct an inventory and prepare a baseline forest resource assessment, determine the age, conditions, species compositions, and long-term prognosis for each distinct cover type or community, prepare a forest resource base map indicating the location and extent of each major forest cover type, and then prepare a 5 to 10 year forest management plan and implement forest management practices specified in the plan. So this particular section is kind of germane to what we'll talk about next.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that?
I had a question
Yeah.
on that as far as us moving forward. And I don't know anything about forestry, but I mean, it's certainly present in all our minds at the moment with what's going on in California. And that we had wildfires here in Connecticut this past summer. So I'm wondering anywhere in the plan, if it's been thought of, or if we're thinking of, how do we look towards helping our open spaces be more fire resilient, moving forward with the challenges of climate change. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It would be interesting. I know that there's a very little short paragraph in the Conwood plan that addresses potential fires. I guess according to what Peter Lesmeris, when he wrote that plan, thought there's a moderate risk, but not a high hazard risk because there's not a lot of fuel on the ground. We don't have a lot of dead trees on the ground. but that, you know, things change and drought conditions. We do have, the park is accessible to people walking, potentially people camping illegally, starting a fire and so on and so forth, or spreading from neighborhood houses. You know, when we're talking about the park in particular. So those are great questions, and maybe, I don't know if there's anything being done at the state level to address those concerns about, you know, forests in the state. But if somebody's interested in looking into that to see if there's anything's come out of deep about that, some kind of recommendations to municipalities and so on, land trusts, how are they addressing those issues with risk of fire?
And Kathy, that'd be a question to ask Conwood or whoever when we next have an update of the forest management plan, the professional forest management plan as opposed to our own document.
Oh, I agree. But I mean, at this point in time, I'm sure the state of Connecticut is looking at that in some way.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
should be.
And they may be coming out with recommendations that they can share with municipalities, land trusts. It would, like I said, if anybody on the commission has an interest in this, maybe Jackie, have you heard anything from the forestry community?
I haven't really stayed up to date, but I think until this year, most people in Connecticut, most foresters, didn't really worry about fire danger. We just have such a moist climate most of the time. I
Yeah.
mean, there's plenty of standard protocols for reducing fuel in the understory that are practiced a lot more out west. But even there, you know, it's really hard to prevent wildfires from happening. And yeah, basically everything was flammable here this fall. And I don't think any amount of forest management was gonna help, you know, a huge amount. Not much you can do once everything is that dry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, I don't want, we can maybe take this up at another meeting, but it even occurred to me when you were asking that question, Laura. For example, if there was a fire in Fenton Ruby Park that was further up Burma Road that we don't normally use. Oh, wait a minute, somebody seems to want to come in. I've got to figure this out because the screen I'm in doesn't always help me who wants to come in? I don't know. Did somebody drop off and have to come back? Nora, did you get dropped off?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Oh,
I'm back.
okay,
I just had to get up and stretch. Sorry.
okay. So it occurred to me, like, if there was a fire in the park, up by, let's say, where we're gonna purchase the Pettix property, the road to get up there is in such poor condition, it would be very difficult for the fire department to get up there. You know, and is that something in the long term we need to think of as a commission, improving that road enough for at least emergency vehicles to get up there, you know, or somebody's injured. So that's something we can talk about in the future, but it was one of those things that popped up into my mind when we were talking about fires.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll see what I can find before the next meeting.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay.
Yeah. Whatever time I have, semester starts this week.
Uh-oh.
Right now, it seems like a good idea.
So there's nothing in the park plan here that says that we cannot do forest management. It actually says we should be doing forest management based on a plan.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so let's jump down to the map of Fenton Ruby. And here's the stands, and we had started to talk about this at our last meeting. Jackie discussed some things from the walk she took with Austin. And primarily what we're interested in right now is looking at stand 7, which is where the Ruby Trail goes through, and stand 9, where the Weigold Trail goes through. Okay, so those would be the two that we were talking about. And here's the summary page from Conwood. So for stand 7, it had been recommended that we do a timber harvest, a thinning in 2028. And then in stand 9, a shelterwood harvest in 2022, which is passed. So those were the recommendations for stand 7 and 9, as far as Conwood had suggested.
What does shelterwood harvest mean?
Jackie?
A shelterwood is a heavier harvest, more aimed at regenerating the stand. So, as opposed to, sorry, I'm having trouble seeing that, but does it say selection or thinning for the other stand?
Thinning.
Thinning. Yeah,
Yeah.
so a thinning would be just removing some of the overstory trees to encourage the remaining overstory trees, whereas a shelter would be more aimed at encouraging young tree growth to basically start the stand over. A shelter would leave many overstory trees, but a lot fewer than in a thinning. And bringing in enough sunlight, so that certain species are able to regenerate that need that extra light.
Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull the map up again. Jackie, could you quickly, just because a few people weren't here at our last meeting when you talked about your and Austin's walk, can you talk a little bit about what you and Austin were thinking for stand 7 and 9?
Sure. So stand 9, they were recommending a shelterwood harvest, and that stand I think would be appropriate to do some management, but just as far as public opinion, and that's an area with trails through it and everything, that is a heavier cut, and I think doing more of a selection harvest where you maybe take out patches of trees and not maybe treat the whole stand in that shelterwood fashion would maybe be a better option. And also with invasive plants being kind of unpredictable, if we did a lighter harvest, there would be less, it'd be easier to assess how the invasive plants are invading the stand, and maybe combat them before they become a problem, as opposed to opening it all up at once. Can make things just grow a lot faster. And certainly the overstory in stand 9, it could be improved quality and health wise. So removing some of the poorer quality trees and allowing to regenerate some areas that would create some different structural types for wildlife habitat, and then hopefully encourage the health of the remaining overstory trees. So I think Austin and I agreed that area would probably be the best area to start with. Stand 7, although it's in a similar condition, there are already a lot of invasive plants in that area, and I think that opening that up, instead of regenerating trees, we would probably be encouraging the barberry in that stand. And then stand 8 had been cut in was it 2016?
Yeah.
And we walked that area, and there is a lot of young trees coming up, and did not seem to be overcrowded, and didn't seem like any work was going to be required at this point, and maybe be reassessed in, with the next management plan in that area.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions regarding what Jackie and Austin had discussed, or concerns?
Well, I guess one question that I would have, Jackie, is if you did a harvest in area 9, where would you go in for a landing and such?
Yeah, so I think the eastern edge along where Burma Road turns into that private property. I think
Oh, yeah,
possibly we could go in along there because I think that's the most gradual topographically. But that would be probably something Austin would need to assess and
yeah,
propose to us.
yeah, okay. Just curious. I know there's pretty steep slopes getting into that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
And
Coming right in off the parking lot wouldn't really be a good option because of
Right, yeah, yeah,
And I think in the Conwood plan, when I reread it for section 9, it did suggest any cutting that was done, any timber harvesting, there should be like a 50-foot buffer on either side of the trail. So from an
Mm.
aesthetic point of view, it would have maybe a little less impact. Is that reasonable, Jackie? 50 feet on each side of the trail?
Um, I'd have to look closer at where the trail comes in. I mean,
Yeah.
possible that would take out a whole section of because it is loop, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's possible where it comes together, it might, eliminate a large section, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea because I would recommend not doing it full scale shelterwood harvest on the whole stand anyways. So I think that would maybe narrow it down a bit to which areas we could do some patch cuts.
Okay.
Would kind of emulate the shelter wood, but on a smaller scale.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm assuming that if we do a harvest, we're gonna close that trail down so people don't get in the way.
Yep.
Well, that's in the
Definitely during
process.
harvest, for sure, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, when we did the timber harvest in here, because it was kind of out of sight and there's no trails down there, we really didn't have a lot of concern or pushback from the public. And we also did a pre-harvest educational walk. We opened it up to the public. We put up signs. We
yeah,
noticed that we were going to have a walk with the forester and everything. And I think we probably had, I don't know, maybe 8 people come out to the walk, particularly people who lived out in this section over here off of, it says Howie Road.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it
Yep.
was Amadon Road, actually, some people. But anyway, that wasn't a big issue, but I predict that this will be a bigger issue because of the trail there. In terms of the public perception.
yeah. That's interesting. After they did the harvest in section 8, of course, that was my go-to place for bushwhacking without running into people for a nice, pleasant stroll in the woods.
Mm.
And I found it to be more interesting after the harvest was done.
Mm. Mhm. Well,
So-
I know when we had changed foresters kind of midstream because the forester who'd marked the trees
Mm,
ended up taking a job with the state. And so we had Eric Hansen come in.
yeah,
And he was concerned that he wasn't going to remark the trees, but he was concerned that we weren't going to take out enough trees to have a good regen of oak.
mhm,
And Jackie, you said there's been some regen, probably not as good as it could have been, but there's been some.
Yeah, there was I think a decent amount of white oak if I'm remembering correctly, and
Mm.
some pine. Yeah, we just walked for a short section, kind of nearby to where we planted the chestnuts.
Okay. Right. My other question about the stand 9 is there's a lot of mountain laurel up here. And I just wondered if you do a harvest, how much damage we're gonna do to some of, those laurel groves in there.
Well, I think part of the goal for regenerating the stand would need to be cutting some of that back, and a lot of the logging machinery would be able to do that. So if it's a concern that we want to preserve certain areas of the laurel, I mean, it's kind of considered an invasive plant. It's a native or naturalized plant, but it's definitely invasive. So in all likelihood, cutting it back is not gonna kill it.
No.
But it might give some other plants a chance to establish in the meantime.
Okay. So,
You know,
yeah, go ahead.
Horticulturally with mountain laurel, if you cut it back, even if you cut it back severely, it sprouts out very aggressively. So
Okay.
you're not going to kill it. It's just going to take a while to get large again, which is going to give the young trees a chance to grow.
Mhm. Oh, okay, good to know.
Actually, cutting it back and having, you know, different tiers of mountain laurel height can actually be good structurally because it can provide different types of
Mhm.
habitat. Like the
Mhm.
higher laurel, you can, like, you know, if you're a small animal, you can go right through the underneath there. Whereas
Mhm.
if you have the lower laurel, it's a lot thicker and, you know, depending if you're predator or prey, you're gonna have a harder time getting through that, depending on the size. So.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. So the next step that we would take on this is to, trying to remember where I put some of these things. Okay. So in terms of whether or not we'd want to move forward to do a timber harvest, Hull Forestry usually tries to ask landowners using this form what some of your goals are, so that they can decide what type of harvest to recommend. Has everybody had a chance to look through these goals?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do we want to go through this maybe one by one and just kind of come up with importance to the commission? And we can check the boxes off. I can mark them on my paper here. Does that sound reasonable?
That's reasonable.
Okay. And we can go back and revisit any of the goals, because sometimes as you go through and you put, you know, if that was a low importance to me or high importance, when you get down to the bottom, you're like, oh, wait a minute, it really wasn't that important compared to the others. So we can certainly remark these. So improve access for walking, skiing, and recreation. How important do commission members feel that should be?
All right, so I have a question right on
Yeah.
this. This is
Yeah.
specifically to these two stands, which have trails in them?
That's a good point. Jackie, should we be looking at this, do you think, just from the perspective of those two stands or from the whole park?
I would probably say the whole park. A lot of times when, you know, I would distribute something like this, it would be to incorporate into a full management plan. I mean,
But we're not doing like a whole management plan for the park, though.
that's true. Yeah. I mean, I guess we can probably just do whichever we feel like and tell Austin that's how we filled it out with those things in mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I frankly, I trust you and Austin to know well, you know well what the goals of the park are and how we like to see it maintained. And I think since we are lucky enough to have somebody professional on the commission, I'm happy to defer to Jackie and Austin and their recommendations. I think lowering property taxes doesn't really apply. Protecting land from development doesn't apply.
So the
Mhm.
homeowner ones,
All right, maybe we can,
Some of it.
maybe we can just kind of,
find the ones that we think apply,
right,
Yeah, that's
okay.
what I'm thinking.
you know.
So we're not improving it for hunting or fishing. So that would be not applicable.
Right.
Or
Okay. And
And when that, the privacy one,
privacy is not applicable. Preserve to
preserving
improve
and scenic beauty, yes.
it's
yeah,
high.
high, yeah.
Protect special features, including those of historical or personal significance.
Not particularly.
But not in that particular parcel. It's not as important as other places in the park.
Okay, so that would be medium to low. Should low,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Enhance the quality and quantity of forest products. We're not really doing this to make money, correct? So,
Yeah, I would say
No, but it's a side benefit.
over quality would, for our purposes.
say it again, Jack?
I, um, I think that the town and the commission is trying to promote forest health more than forest quality.
Mm,
I think further down, there's forest resiliency. Wouldn't that be kind of
Yeah,
what you
so
mean?
that resiliency would be high, but the timber products.
We're not, our goal is not to produce forest products.
Right.
Right.
So I think that would be low or not applicable.
Okay. All right. What's agroforestry,
Good,
Jackie?
that was my question.
Agroforestry can be a lot of things. It's basically combination of agriculture and forestry. So whether it's like a Christmas tree farm or silvopasture, where you're incorporating livestock into a forest ecosystem. There's a number of different things. Maple syrup production would be considered agroforestry.
So it's more commercial.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say that's either low or not applicable.
Okay.
Wouldn't you think?
Yes.
Right.
And producing income, no.
No.
Yeah.
Applicable. Producing firewood, no. Enhance habitat for birds,
Yes.
Yeah.
high,
I.
Yes.
okay. Enhance aquatic habitat in streams, ponds, and other wetlands, high,
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay. Enhance habitat for wildlife, high.
Yeah.
Promote diversity of plant species and habitat types,
Yeah.
Yeah. okay. Resiliency, high.
Mm,
Minimize damage from forest
Right.
pests, high. Protect water quality, high.
Right,
Yeah.
Sequester, or store carbon for climate change mitigation, yes.
Yeah.
Suppress or eradicate invasive plants,
Aye.
yes.
right.
Lower property taxes, not applicable. And
Protect land for development, not applicable.
not applicable,
Yeah,
okay, all right.
yeah.
And then I'm just gonna go back up to the first one, improve access for walking, skiing, recreation. Medium,
I think it's the improve that's getting me. Are we
Yeah,
doing
I
this
think,
to
yeah.
improve the trails? No, it's like a different
yeah,
purpose, but we want to have good access for the walking trails.
right.
Good
With
as
this,
medium.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I know like for forestry goals, sometimes landowners, and Jackie, maybe you can weigh in on this too, would be, I might, when I'm doing a timber harvest, want to make sure that the skid roads and stuff are laid out, so later on I can use them for trails or recreation. Is that kind of what this question's asking?
Yeah, I think so. And possibly, even if you don't think that the forest management would be related, if if it is a goal, I would check it high or whatever we feel like, because Austin might have some ideas for how we could incorporate either, new trail that hooked up to the existing trails, or, widening certain areas for different types of, like skiing. Like I think a lot of the trails in Stand 9, you wouldn't be able to do any skiing in there.
Mm,
But if they were widened or made flatter in some way.
yeah,
How about medium for that one?
okay, gotcha, medium, okay. So any other so moving forward, how do people feel about, what would be the timing of doing a timber harvest? First of all, Jackie, do you think?
I think that Austin was saying that if we agree that we want to move forward, he would do an assessment to figure out, how much would be removed and kind of general value and the scope of the project, and then he could, at that point, propose, a timeline. A lot of times, when I was doing that work, it would be up to 2-year contract once we signed something with a logger, because of the unpredictability of the weather conditions. So you
Mhm.
want to make sure that they can be out there when the ground is frozen or dry, which is very limiting these days. So giving a longer time period allows for doing a better job, basically.
Mhm. Okay. I have to also go back in our commission notes to look back for the 2016 harvest to see kind of use that as a model for how we approach this. You know, did we go to planning and zoning? Did we go to the Board of Selectmen? Did it go to town meeting before we did the harvest? Because whatever we recommend, because that's what we would do as a commission, we're gonna have to pass it through other people.
Yeah, so I think before we tell Austin anything, we should probably get those approvals, because I think he had mentioned that any further assessment that he does, if we don't move forward, then the town would be liable to pay for his time having done those assessments.
Mhm. It's kind of hard on one hand, though, to propose this to the Board of Selectmen or to residents when we can't answer questions like, where would the skid road, come in, or where would the landing be? How much wood would be taken out? I don't know. I mean, one of the things the commission could decide to do is to pay for his time to do that assessment. Do you have a sense of what that could potentially cost?
I don't, yeah, we
Oh.
would have to ask Austin that.
Okay, all right.
I've forgotten how the finances go. I do know that we didn't make much money off of it, because they take the timber. Bob, do you remember how that went?
I don't, we barely came out ahead on that. It was pretty much a break-even situation.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It was a couple $1,000s actually
Yeah.
that the town made, but that's not our purpose.
That's not our purpose,
No.
no. No, but
No.
it's, but the questions will be asked about how much money, how much money we're gonna make off of this, and and the answer to that is, we're not doing it for money, we're doing it to improve the forest.
Yeah. I would almost be in favor of paying him to come in and do the assessment. So we have the answers that we're gonna be asked. And just chalk it up to a cost of managing Fenton Ruby.
Well, I can certainly contact Austin and get a sense of what it would cost. Do we want to have him just assess the Weigold area?
At this point, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Possible in his assessment, he could include, we could have some arrangement where this would be the cost if we did not move forward, and then this would be the potential overall income if we did move forward, not paying him for that assessment, because I think he was originally going to incorporate that into the overall.
Mm,
Mhm.
okay, okay.
Yeah, if he knows he's gonna get the contract,
Right.
yeah.
And he said he'd be very happy to come to one of our commission meetings to, answer questions, talk about things. I mean, I don't think he would charge us for that particular time. I could invite him to our next meeting if you'd like to do that.
I'm not gonna be here, so. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, anybody else feel that they would like to have him come to a meeting to talk a little bit further about this, or do you want me to just move forward and ask him?
I think I would just move forward and ask him what the cost of the assessment would be.
Okay. Okay. Jackie, is there anything else that you can think of that I should ask him? Or,
I think it probably would be incorporated anyways, but if he is going to put together a cost estimate, we would definitely need him to include his time doing field walks with the public and
Mhm.
kind of fielding any complaints or issues.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right, thank you for everybody being prepared to discuss this. I appreciate people reading things ahead of time. All right, Stop sharing. Okay, moving on. Knowlton Preserve, Conservation, Talmadge Conservation Track. I did reach out again to the landowner that is adjacent to the original town, no, to the new Talmadge piece. And he was not available to go out to look again at his property line where he has a concern. At our last meeting, I had mentioned that the property owner was concerned that the trail comes close to his property line and he's concerned about his pond on his property that, you know, some kid could see it and come over the border and I told him I'd be happy to meet him out there, and Patty said she'd come out as well when I set up a time, but he's not available yet to do that. That was the only report on Knowlton and Talmadge. Anything under town development? Anything?
The Economic Development Commission, I think, will have their study completed soon. And I think there'll be another public forum, either the end of this month or sometime early or midway in February.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Nothing else from planning and zoning or that nothing new?
No, nothing new. Again, we're going over some regs. And in conjunction with the economic development, I'm sure we're going to be taking another look at the SDZ zone.
Mhm.
And we're going to need to look at that and kind of massage the sharp edges off of that so the public better understands what that can do for us.
What is SDZ?
Strategic, I'm having a senior moment. The strategic,
Development zone?
yeah, it's basically allows a developer to come in and present a 30% build out plan of a property instead of having to do like 70% on their first go around. And it was unfortunate that our first trial of that SDZ zoning regulation dovetailed with the large warehouse that was proposed in town. That wasn't the intended effect. Although we got shock therapy from the town and people's input about that. It is an interesting tool, an important tool to attract developers because they don't have to put out so much development money up front. In my own personal thought about the SDZ, I think the SDZ probably saved the town from going to court with that large warehouse because they only had to do a 30% presentation of their build out as opposed to a 70%. Even at 30%, it costs them multiple millions of dollars to do that plan on that property. So in a way, it served its purpose in a way that most of the population in Willington doesn't understand.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, moving on to collaborative organizational news and communication. I had sent out a notice to you via email about the Connecticut Land Conservation Council's conference on March 22nd. It'll be in Wesleyan, at Wesleyan University in Middletown. It looks really good. If anybody, again, would like to attend, the commission certainly can cover, reimburse you for your costs.
And I think the fees are lower because we're a member
But
organization.
I would like to go. I'd love if somebody else would like to go also. So I'll throw that
And
out.
we haven't spent much money, so. If you just keep submit a copy of your registration form, then we can reimburse you for your costs. Registration costs.
Laura,
So
I'll give it
sure
some
that-
thought and maybe we can.
Check the member
get-
box.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let you know. I'll be away the end of January into early February, but when I get back, I'll consider whether it works for my schedule.
Okay.
Thanks. Park and Rec Department, I had just noticed last time that the recreation director had resigned and took a new job, and so we're without a department head there for now. So we don't have anything planned with Park and Rec, but I think moving forward, it'd be nice if we can do some additional things. They had sponsored some hikes and things like that. Nora had gone out and work with them as well. So I think it'd be great if when we get a new director, we kind of reach out and make that connection.
Yeah, according to the ad, yesterday was the deadline for submitting applications
Okay.
for the position.
And then Willington Public Library, is anybody aware of anything coming up that we might want to connect with them? Have you heard anything, Nora, from Steve again for next year? Maybe it's kind of early in his planning.
I have not heard anything from him.
Okay. Would you be willing to maybe check in with them and just see if there's anything that's on his radar screen that might be a good dovetail fit with, things you want to do?
Springtime. Yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
great. Okay. Perfect. And then we also talked about last meeting, again, the idea of resurrecting perhaps a table at the flea market or on Willington Day, so the Conservation Commission has a presence at those events. Is anybody interested in taking a lead on thinking about doing something like that? Willington Day, I believe, is on Memorial Day. Is that?
Or the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. Is that, I
Yeah, I think
they
so.
moved it around a bit and then I kind of,
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what day it will be held on this year, but it'll be in May sometime. And the flea market's in September, usually on the green. 350th anniversary, Bob, you're on that commission, correct, or committee?
300th.
Oh, 300th, excuse me.
We're not that old yet.
Okay, 300th anniversary.
Yes.
Do you foresee a fit with anything we're doing?
It could be. Right now, since Jimmy left, we haven't had a meeting. Some of us are talking about trying to get together again. We're still looking for interested people that have brilliant ideas to how we should celebrate our 300th anniversary.
Is it 2025?
2026.
Okay, good.
So at this point, when Peter asked me to be on that group, I said, yeah, I would, but I don't in no shape or form want to be the chair. So what I've done from my historic perspective, I've already lined up 2 walking tours of South Willington. And we're going to try to get these things spaced apart. So if somebody can't make it in the spring, maybe they can make it in the fall. So I've got those lined up, looking at possibly getting somebody to come and talk about gravestone carvings. I don't know if anybody's aware, but The Hill Cemetery has some of the most iconic hand-carved stones in the area by well-known carvers. And some of those stones are starting to succumb to their age. And they will join the people that their monuments to in the ground in not too many years. But we're looking at doing that. We want to do a couple walking tours of the green and the surrounding structures. The green is made up of 6 or 7 land parcels that were given to the town, where the town purchased over a good number of years. So we want to do that. There's conversation about doing a bus tour of some of the more significant structures that are still standing in town. Maybe a tour of several of the cemeteries. And that's kind of what we're doing. And then we're starting to talk about a parade, but a parade that would probably start on the town green, go down Old Farms, go to the senior center, and where they've got their memorial garden and such around the flagpole. Come back out of that, kind of disperse, and then have a town-wide barbecue or such, maybe hopefully be able to use the fireman's pit. And I don't know what else we want to do. We've been asking, and not too many people have turned out. And one of the things that all of us are kind of talking about, we want this to happen, but we don't want it to happen and then have people say, well, gee, why didn't they do this? Or, it would have been a lot better if.
Yeah.
You're always going to have people like that, though, that, that don't volunteer to do anything and then complain afterwards.
Yeah, armchair cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Rah, rah.
Bob, did you say that you would consider doing it during that Walktober? That's, that during that time? Like,
Well, we really haven't gotten a schedule down yet. So, I mean, if we could coordinate something like that.
with the Walktober, a lot of people go through those lists and, all the happenings around here. And
Yeah, and
Might be
well,
good.
it's not like we want to compete with that either.
right.
And these, the idea of having these, each option in having it done 2 different times is to allow people in Willington, it's our birthday. How do we allow as many people from Willington to come out and hear what the town has as a history? And how do we best tell that? Well, you best tell that by getting people out and, showing them or walking them, having a conversation, bringing out some old photographs. I mean, that's what the Historical Society tried to do this year when we did our first ever calendar with 12 scenes from around Willington, to try to get people understanding that we do have a history. Maybe we can take everybody down to the Jared Sparks homestead, and maybe more people will understand who Jared Sparks is. We can introduce, the Historical Society could introduce them to who Jared Sparks was. He sat for 2 professional busts in his lifetime. One is a young man and one is an older man. One of those busts is at the dining hall on Harvard's campus. The other one resides in Willington in the vault that the Historical Society has. So, those are the things that we're trying to bring forward.
And his
And-
portrait is at the New Britain Museum of American Art.
Right, and there's other portraits of him over time that are in various museums as well. So anyway, so that's what, yeah, so yeah, I'm one member of that committee. And we're looking for people to throw out ideas to help celebrate our birthday.
Hmm.
You know,
I vote we have a big piñata that we bat around.
we could put it on the flagpole on the green.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good.
So I'll be expecting you at our next meeting. I'll give you an email. Send me an email.
Okay, thanks for that update, Bob.
Sure.
Open space opportunities, Burma Road property. As you know, the town approved the funding on 12/17. And the attorneys are working on the purchase and sales agreement and the title search as we speak. So hopefully that'll move forward. We can close on that property in the next month or two. Historic parcel on Jared Sparks Road. I left another message for the landowner, Mrs. Powell, and have not received anything back. So I don't know what her status is. I'll try again when I'm back from my mini vacation. Willington Wire, article due March 2025. Can I get a volunteer to do the March 2025 edition?
I'll do that for you.
Okay, great.
I like the idea of something on our forest and fire resiliency.
Ah, that would be interesting. Or fire prevention.
Fire prevention, yeah, kind of.
Ah, that'd be great.
I
You
think I
know,
did hear that it was being postponed until they found a new rec director.
oh, good point. I hadn't thought
The
about
rec
that.
director is the one who does that.
Yeah,
Willington Wire.
yes.
Well, I'll
Oh,
start thinking
yeah.
about something whenever, we might get somebody and it's not even ends up being delayed.
I can check my email, but I'm pretty sure I saw an email that said something to that effect.
That's correct, Jackie. It is.
Ah,
So I talked to Peter today. He had a question for me. And when I was in the office, he said that he started going through the applicants for that and had them sorted out in 3 different categories already. So he's hoping that in the next, within a couple weeks, he should have hopefully somebody on board.
Well, that's hopefully enough for 3 piles.
Well, the one pile is no way, the middle pile is well, maybe, and the other pile is, yes, these are the people that we want to talk with.
okay, great. Well, thank you for being on standby, Laura, for the wire. Communications, there's none that I have. Open space and natural resource map. I did get in touch with Robert Fahey. He's a professor in the Department of Natural Resources at UConn. And I asked him if he might have any students that would be interested in working with us on doing our natural resource update.
Mm.
And he said that, he may have some students that would be willing to do it as an independent study or as an internship. So he said to just let him know a couple months in advance of when we would want to start to work on that project. So as you know, we're going to have our part of the natural resource mapping and open space update to go into the plan of conservation and development, and that's going to be 2028. So we've got a lot of time, but it might be good to think about starting this with, a student, because it may take some time. We may end up switching off on other students, over time, depending on how much gets accomplished, when we start this. So I was thinking perhaps letting him know we'd like to start for the fall semester, so he could kind of maybe line somebody up that he knows is coming back. Does that sound reasonable?
That sounds good.
Okay. All right, membership. So I had sent an email out to all of you, which was a response to Tish. She had told me that
Heather
Alexson, thank you, was interested in becoming a Conservation Commission member, and she gave me her email, her work email, because she works for Public Works. And I sent her an email and I have not heard back from her. I did try to call this week and she was not in when I called. So I'll keep reaching back out to her. Hopefully she did get my email. And when I sent that out, Patty responded to me that she said, if Heather is interested, then she would like to resign her position and become an alternate. And then I said, well, let's talk to Nora and see if Nora would like to take, if Patty's going to resign, Nora would like to take her place as a regular. And Nora, you did say you'd be interested in that. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
So I did check with the town clerk to see.
musical chairs.
It is, but luckily we have people to fill the chairs. Let's
That's right, yeah.
And we don't know about Heather yet, but we can do the Nora and Patty rearrangement. But to do that, I did talk with the town clerk because there's state statutes about when people are appointed to a position on a commission, how you have to first resign from your present alternate position before you can be appointed by the Board of Selectmen to become a regular. And Patty will have to do the same. So there's a very, very brief and simple form that I can send you from, it's on the town clerk's website, but I can send it to you. All you have to do is fill it out, sign it, and mail it to her because it has to be a wet signature. You can't send it through the email.
Okay, I could drop it off.
You can drop it off, yeah,
Okay,
for the town clerk.
all
And
right.
then- And if you would let me know when you've officially done that, that gets sent, I guess, to the Board of Selectmen from the town clerk. And they at least know, and they probably will even make a comment at a Board of Selectmen meeting that you've resigned. But then we can send a letter from the commission saying we recommend you to be appointed as a regular member.
Okay,
Okay, if everybody is in agreement of that, of course. So, I guess we can't technically recommend you for the position until it's open. So we have to wait for Patty to resign as well, and then she'll do the same thing and reapply as an alternate. So,
Okay.
we'll make a formal motion at the next meeting once you and Patty have officially resigned. If that's okay.
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 Thank you.
Okay. And then under officers, for those of you who weren't here last meeting, Carol and I are still willing to serve in our respective positions, but we still need a vice chairman and a secretary. And I really would like to ask somebody to, at least consider stepping up to do some of the secretarial work. I find it very hard to take notes and run the meeting. And it'd be a process that I can teach you over time. It's not hard. There's pretty much a template for filling out the minutes, after the meeting that you can kind of just use the agenda. And so I really would like to see if anybody out there would consider, either becoming secretary or at least be willing to take notes some of the meetings.
I can become secretary. I don't love taking notes, but you record the meetings, right? So
Yes.
you have that to help with the minutes.
Okay. That would be lovely, Laura. I mean, I know you're involved in other things too. I don't want you to do this out of pity.
No, you do. That's how people get roped in.
Yeah, I can work with you, to show you over time. My process, it's something that's not too difficult after the meeting, just to put things together. The minutes will have to be sent to the town clerk, and they can be sent via email within 48 hours of any vote. But if there's no vote taken during a meeting, you can send them in whenever.
Okay.
So, all right. That's great. So you and I will talk then about that process. But officially, would someone like to make a motion to recommend that, well, to appoint Laura as secretary? This isn't through the Board of Selectmen, this is just a commission vote.
So move.
Okay, Carol, second, anybody?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstained? So moved. Okay. All right, thank you so much, Laura.
You're welcome.
And how about vice chair?
No,
So one of the things, Kathy, I would certainly step up for vice chair, but I'm vice chair for planning and zoning. And so I'd rather not. At any time you need some support or a little bolster of extra energy at a meeting or something, I'm more than happy to accompany you and lend my voice to the cause that we represent in town. But I just can't bring myself to do that, being vice chair of the planning and zoning.
Oh, I totally understand. So thank you. And I appreciate your support at the meetings, especially the CIP meeting. Anybody else interested in doing vice chair? It's not a hard job. I mean, you might maybe have to run a meeting if I'm not around, but
You always call the meeting off.
you can call the meeting off. Great. So, okay, give it some thought. And maybe if we end up with some new members, you know, some other folks might be interested in doing some of these other jobs. Okay, new business. I don't have anything. Does anybody have anything you'd like to add to the agenda tonight to discuss? Okay.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, any second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, amen. And let's see, what time is it?
9:07.
9:07. Okay, very good.
Okay. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New
And to
Year.
you.
All right.
See you in March.
February. Oh, you're going away?
February.
Yes.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're not recording right now, so I wanted to tell you I will be going away from January 27th through February 9th. And I probably won't be very reachable. I'll be in Costa Rica, so
Nice.
Oh, sweet.
yeah, thanks. But
Where in Costa Rica are you going?
we're taking a tour that's going to the Pacific coast, then up to Arenal, the volcano.
Okay.
Yeah, and then back toward San Jose.
Nice.
So,
Everybody I've talked to that goes to Costa Rica, when they come back, they always say, don't take a picture of the first tree fern you see, because there's a lot better tree ferns to see.
Well,
Okay.
Costa Rica is a really neat place.
Yeah. Carol was kind enough to lend us a map and some books. She and her husband have been, so.
Oh, nice.
But if you need me, you can, text or email me. I will be picking those up. I'll have Wi-Fi connection there if you need me for some reason.
Kathy, go on vacation. Don't check.
Yeah,
your
don't tell
budget.
us to.
Don't tell us, and just go on vacation and forget about everything, all your other responsibilities. Otherwise, it's not
Yeah.
going to be a fun vacation.
Well, that's,
Kathy, when you're there, check out the hummingbirds. They've got some beauties.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
okay. Well, thank you.
The birds
I'd like
are
to be
amazing.
able, I'd like to be able to let the Selectman's office know who to reach out to if there's an issue that comes up with the park, or probably that would be the only thing, if there was a trail issue or something. Would anybody volunteer to be that person that gets the call?
I'd be around.
Okay,
Mark and I will be around.
Yeah.
okay. Or if you don't, do you mind if
I'm
I,
going away for a while and
yeah,
overlapping by a couple of days,
Where are you going, Carol?
probably.
Where are you
Going on
going
a cruise,
to? Where?
Panama Canal,
Nice.
but it's one that stops and different places from the last Panama Corral.
Mm.
We had to cancel a vacation last winter, so this is a trip to use up the credits from that trip.
You may not need a passport for Panama pretty soon.
Well, I'm just glad we're going on Viking. At least it's not an American cruise ship, because
Yeah.
I don't know how well we're going to be, how America's ships are going to be received by Panamanian shipping, the Panama Canal Authority at this stage. But it's just
Oh,
a
boy.
little bit, life is a little bit weird these days, um,
Yeah. Yeah, and have a good trip.
yeah, well, okay. My favorite remark was for Justin Trudeau saying there's no balls chance in hell of Canada becoming the 51st state. That's it's got to be one of the most absurd suggestions of all, especially you talk about calling out the military to take over Greenland. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much ignorance there is behind all of that craziness. But,
Oh, well.
oh well.
Here we go for 4 years.
That's the other thing, Kathy, is don't look at the news while you're gone.
Yeah.
Nothing I can do about it. So. All right.
Good
Well, take
trips.
care,
Bye-bye.
everybody. All right.